Welcome to Roots and Ruminants, your podcast for creative and innovative use of farm, pasture, and rangeland. We're going back to the basics of raising and grazing livestock, growing your own forage, and practical land use.
All right, we are off and running with another episode of Roots and Ruminants. I'm Justin Frick, your host, and today we're sitting down with Jay Algiere with the Algiere Homestead, Algiere Ranch. You can find him on YouTube. Him and his wife live near DeSoto, Missouri, and we're excited to kind of lay out from the beginning how to go about kind of developing a forage plan. And so I'm excited to do this because we've had some inquiries from other listeners of, hey, you should really interview somebody who's just getting going because I got lots of questions and I'm at ground zero too and I want to learn from them. So Jay, can you give us just an overview of your operation? It looks like you and your wife bought some land in Missouri and now you're going to take on the challenge of building this thing up.
Yeah, well, first of all, Justin, thanks for having me. And I think you nailed it. We are definitely at ground zero. So hopefully, I'm willing to share all the things that I don't know because I'm hopefully, going to learn a lot along the way with everybody else that's asking. But to answer your question, yeah, Charlotte, my wife, and I, we bought 80 acres. We got very, I don't like saying the word lucky, but we came across this plot of land. Was an older gentleman who actually had an opportunity to sell it for much more than what he was going to sell it to me, but he did not want to sell it because he knew it was going to get developed into a subdivision. So that's why I use lucky, because it almost got sold before us. He luckily found that out and gave us the opportunity to buy it.
Very cool.
Which that's where I add in a little bit of God's luck there, because without that we wouldn't be where we are today. So we bought 80 acres in the middle of Missouri, and we just had a desire and a passion to want to start a first-generation ranch, and we just jumped head in with no background, no experience, but we were like, we'll figure it out.
You said yes to an opportunity, though, right? Of keeping care of the land that you knew he wanted to see it go on as, ag land and not be developed. Yep. So
yeah,
that too, it's on you, right? Like you're putting yourself up to the challenge. So
100%. I'm a big believer that like if you ask for something, you talk about your dreams and your wants and your wishes. That when God opens the door for you, it's not up to you to decide if you walk through it or not. It's like, hey, I've been asking for this, I got to go.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the opportunity comes, then you take it. So, you're a first generation farm rancher.
Yep.
Where did the passion come from? What made you interested in ag?
I wish I knew how to answer that properly, Justin, because I still can't determine it. My wife, she's from Virginia. She thought she was going to live on a beach. So, Charlotte, if you're listening, I know this is true. She thought she was going to live on the beach and, definitely live on the coast. And then somehow she ended up, with me. And when I grew up, my grandparents had like some chickens and some goats, but nothing like what my desire and dream is that we build for Algiere Ranch. To answer your question, I don't know where it came from. It's just always been in my heart. Like I've always wanted to do it. I've been in the fitness industry for 15 years. That's still what I do today for my professional job. And even though like training people, I love helping people with their fitness and progressing in that side of things. But I've always had this just desire in my heart to want to raise cattle. And as I've gotten older, like there's things that have become more important to me. Like raising quality food for the people around us. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit, but.
Well, I think, I don't want to, pin you down as far as where that passion came from. But like, if you're involved in the fitness industry, and seeing the health food side, is it more that, or was it when you're 8 years old, you're watching John Wayne movies and you wanted to be a cowboy, calving out cows?
Yeah. So it's pretty funny. I didn't know this because, you can't really have those memories back then. But my mom, I'm sure, a lot of you guys' moms, they got those stacks of pictures of when, you were little. And she starts sending me and Charlotte these pictures of me always dressed up as like a cowboy. So I'm like, I guess it's always been in there. And then I think we all go through these stages of life where, okay, well, now you go to college, now you go get a job in town and all this. So I guess I just stacked it away somewhere inside. And then finally I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this thing. I'm becoming a cowboy.
Is that when the mustache came? Like, was that same time?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the mustache came about 2 years ago, right before we bought the property. I'm like, I'm going all in.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah. So
I was we had Matt Feldhaus from Ranching Sodak on the podcast, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or whatever it was. And he was giving me crap because my mustache was too short. Of course, he's got this long handlebar mustache, and it's just raggedy and rough. That's a cowboy stash.
Well,
you're just kind of somewhat in between, though, a little cleaner.
I'm trying to figure it out. I used to be straight across, and then I started testing these out, and I'm like, we'll just see.
Yeah. So many options.
Yeah, it's fun.
Keeps it fun. Oh, shoot. All right, so let's go back to the land that you got, and let's kind of give the listeners the lay of the land as far as where DeSoto is in Missouri, and then maybe start to tell me just a little bit about it so that we can start to understand what it grows as far as perennial grasses, what are some options for annual stuff as well.
Yeah. All right, well, you're going to take me to school, Justin, because I'm not super educated as far as, all the different types of forages and types of grasses growing, but hopefully you're gonna catch me up to speed here. But to answer your question, DeSoto is called about an hour south of St. Louis, Missouri. So if you go to a map, it's just directly south of St. Louis. We got 80 acres, and it's a little hilly. We got subtle hills in the terrain. Nothing too bad. I know if you guys are out west or anywhere, you'd be like, those aren't hills, but we call them hills here. So,
yeah.
So that's what we're working with. When we bought it, I was a little impatient. That's one of my biggest faults is I'm very impatient. I want to get stuff done now. And I'm learning, with having, a ranch and that stuff, it takes a long time for things to happen. It's not going to happen right away with some things. But where this is coming into the equation of the land, and so everybody understands, when we bought it, there was a lot of woods. And me being impatient, I think I need more open land. Had a logging company come in and really created a pretty big mess for us to clean up, which we've been cleaning up this past year. We got a lot done, so there's a lot cleared. Now we're just hoping to set up a process of getting it back on track as fast as possible.
So when they come and clear it, I don't know anything about the timber industry. Did they just give you a bid of, yep, we'll give you X amount of dollars to take the lumber? And then what state do they leave the land in? Like, do they de-root the trees and everything too? They pick up every twig, or what is?
I can't speak for all of it. Again,
Okay.
First time. I've had one experience. And I don't want to speak for everybody because I'm not a believer that, like, hey, one bad instance, it makes everything bad. But my experience, I would not do it again. There were some agreements on the bid. Things changes as the project goes along, which me unknowing, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, when I'm looking at a tree, the value of it or anything like that. Again, seemed like a decent deal. Then come to find out towards the end, I'm like, okay, this is not good. But they come in and basically they take out the middle of the tree. So you got the top, that's all brushy. Then you got the stump at the bottom. They just take out the middle and leave everything else.
Like, how much stump do they leave? Like a 2-foot stump?
It depends really how they can get that machine in there. I mean, this is a giant machine. Have you ever seen those things?
Yeah, I've seen some cool YouTube videos of clearing stuff.
They're pretty fascinating, man. They just drive in there. They got an arm that grabs the tree. They just chop it. Yep. It folds over like this, and then another arm comes through and just takes off all the branches. I mean, they're taking down huge trees in 7 seconds.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Incredible.
Yeah. While it was happening, I'm like, holy crap, we can see our land. It was, becoming unveiled right in front of our eyes. So it seemed really cool. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Still very excited. We're in a great spot. It's just a learning lesson. I wouldn't do it that way if I did it again. But yeah, it was a pretty big mess. We had piles. We still have we pushed all the brush into windrows. So we have a lot of brush piles all over the property right now. But majority of it is cleaned up. I probably got 20 acres left that I haven't touched, maybe 15 acres that I haven't touched from the brush, just because ran out of time. Muddy season came around and I was doing more damage, tearing it up, getting equipment stuck than I was clearing.
So did you have to go do stump removal then?
Yep.
So how did you do that?
Fortunately, one, I rented equipment, and then the other, I actually, through the relationships that I have and the company that I work for now, our CEO owns a piece of equipment, and then when he found out I was doing all that, he's like, "Hey, use mine." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's great." Very fortunate, because that's a huge piece of equipment. Costs a lot to rent one.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate. He's got a 200 or a John Deere 200D excavator. So that thing's massive. It can pluck them out. Yeah. But again, coming down to the cost of things, I could only eat so much of that at a time. It's costing about $800, $900 just for fuel to run that thing a week.
Sure.
So it was just my first year into building this ranch. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was just lighting money on fire. So
yeah, some ranchers that are 50 years into it still feel the same way. So
yeah, I know. I was like, I got to slow this thing down. I'm like, I just felt like everything I'd been building up over the course of my life to tackle this dream, I was like, man, it is depleting so fast.
Yeah.
So, but we're in a good spot.
So what did you do? So you got that all done last year. Then did you go ahead and did you plant something on that, or after it was kind of cleared, or you just kind of let it be, let it rest?
I put down a little bit of clover.
Okay.
And what was the other thing? Chicory.
Oh,
I put down a little bit of clover and chicory. Just from doing my own education, I was just trying to get something in to hopefully help with, getting some nutrients back into the soil. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think, the clover is really going to help with bringing nitrogen into the soil. So
yeah.
Yep. I was just trying to do something. Again,
exactly.
I like to take action. I don't like sitting still, and sometimes that's a problem for me.
Yeah, no, I think getting something growing on the disturbed land is just anything is going to be a benefit.
Yep.
And so something that's quick growing to hold the ground in place, get some roots just to infiltrate water again is probably the main goal.
Yep.
So at the timeline where you're getting this land cleared, what had you already bought cows, or when did you start doing that?
Yeah, so the clearing process started December 1st of 23. Which I don't want to make it seem like every inch, was, torn up. That's not the case.
Okay.
I would say probably 60%. There was still 40% that was still growing, still had stuff on it.
Sure. And that's pasture?
You could consider it pasture. It's not great quality though.
Okay.
Now with that being
said, it wasn't
said,
trees. It wasn't.
It wasn't trees.
Yep.
So with that, we got cows March 15th of 24.
Okay.
So that spring, we got them basically immediately, and a lot of my education from the cattle side, because again, had no experience with it. So YouTube was a huge blessing for us. I remember coming home before we even moved to the property. I would literally dedicate 1 to 2 hours every single night just watching YouTube videos, which thankfully my wife got on board with it, because I was like, man, I'm going to drive you crazy, because, I mean, Greg Judy was like, he was like my guy. Like, I felt every night I was like, all right, I'm spending 2 hours with Greg Judy, because he kind of has the methodology of raising cattle that I am enjoying and wanting to go after. So,
yeah, and he's from Missouri, too.
He's from Missouri.
I think that's pretty relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was trying
he's
to find
probably one of the best grazers and teachers on it, too.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Which I didn't know at the time, right? Like, I found this guy that's in Missouri. I'm like, cool. I like what he's talking about.
Yep.
So yeah, just trying to download as much as I could from him. And, you know, one of the things that I heard early on is like, hey, if you can just get the animals on your grass, that's going to be huge for helping that, you know, bring it back to life. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll get a couple out there and we'll just see what we can make happen.
You know, this is kind of a side thought to all this, but like, thankfully for some reason, the stuff that gets popular on YouTube is actually truthful and relevant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because anybody can post whatever crap they want to.
Yep.
And you know, it's just, fortunately, yeah, in your case, you watch Greg Judy instead of some bozo leading you down the wrong path.
Yeah, I think YouTube is still a little bit of common sense based algorithm, not, you know, others. But we won't go down that path.
Oh man, you are spot on with that. Yep. All right, so you got the cows in March.
Yep.
Were they pregnant?
Yeah. So we started off and we got 11, and 4 of them were bred.
Okay. Were they all supposed to be bred?
No.
Okay. All right.
No. So I bought a bunch from another older couple that was looking to downsize their herd. So I got a decent deal, and I just took basically as many as they would give me, and it worked out really well. We had 4 of them were bred. We had, I think, 5 calves out of the group.
Okay. Yep.
And then a couple yearlings.
Okay, so kind of a mixed bag of, you know, this is where my operation's at, and here you're going to have every single age group that my operation's, and yeah, you just kind of start off and go. Not a bad way to do it, really.
Yeah, they were here in Missouri,
so.
You know, just a couple hours southwest of us, and again, like, I was looking for cows, and then I had an opportunity, got to talk with them, figure out what they were doing. It was a way for me to help and get started, and I was like, cool, let's just get it rolling.
And you said there was 11 of them?
Yep.
Is that still the amount that you have?
No, we're up to 21 now.
Up to 21. Okay. And so I'm thinking through stocking rates and amount of feed you need to produce and stuff. So if you got 21, and it was a total of like 80 acres.
Yep.
And maybe, so what do you think? Like 35 of that is not trees or wasn't, didn't have to have timber removed, like 35 acres or something. 30 acres, that's more grass than trees.
Probably closer to 40.
40 acres. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So, just knowing, you know, so like our stocking rate up here in eastern South Dakota, southwest Minnesota, it takes us 3 acres to run 1 cow-calf pair. And you're lower than that. You know, you're probably more like that too.
Yeah. Just
based off of your rainfall and your longer growing season. And that's grazing from May up until the end of the season, October. You know, so as far as the number of head that you have with the amount of acres that you have, production, you're not going to overdo it yet, which is great. I mean, most people, they go on and they're like, yeah, I've got this 10-acre pasture. I could probably buy 10 cows and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And then they're behind.
Right. Yeah.
That's hard to catch up. Okay, so I guess where I kind of want to go with this whole conversation, and I think there's some cool things to come from this, is like setting the stage to think about how you're going to make feed off of it, how you're going to develop some pasture grazing systems within it. And because you're, like we said, we're at ground zero, we can get back on this podcast and in summertime after things are up and growing, and then make a little update as far as progress goes.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the stage that I'm at, is figuring out, okay, what is the management system going to be to maximize this?
Yeah.
Because again, like I told you, I want to build this into, really a fully operational ranch. I don't want to just have cows to have cows. Like I want to, there's a bigger purpose behind it. So I need to make it as efficient and effective as possible.
For sure. Yeah, no, totally. Yep. Okay, so on those grazing acres, like where are you at as far as fencing, infrastructure, and that whole process?
Yeah, so the whole perimeter is, we got a whole perimeter fence.
Yeah.
The back 60 is 5-strand barbed wire. And then it originally had 5-strand barbed wire around the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was educated from Greg Judy, so I was a big believer in high tensile, and I wanted to get electric everywhere. So when I moved in, I was like, all right, we're taking barbed wire out, we're putting high tensile in.
Mm-hmm.
I did that on about, I don't know the exact footage, but on that front 20, I covered quite a bit of that in high tensile, taking out barbed wire, and I was like, this is going to take some time.
Yeah, it's fun putting up high tensile, but it's not fun taking out barbed wire.
No, it's not. So then I kind of changed that plan. I was like, look, hey, the barbed wire is serving a purpose right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to slow down this whole process by just trying to replace it when it's still like in great shape.
Yeah.
I guess I should say good shape, not great shape.
Yeah, good enough.
Good enough, yeah.
Yep.
I was like, I should really start focusing on the internal infrastructure, like dividing out the pastures, our paddocks.
Yep.
Because I don't have any of that done yet. That's my plan and goals for this spring. As soon as the ground softens up, start getting some divided paddocks in that back 60.
Yep. And that too, like, you can do that with 1 or 2 strands of high tensile. You can do it with poly wire. I guess wherever your natural breaks are to make a decent sized enough paddock with some high tensile, I'd do that.
Yep.
And then I'd probably just use poly to subdivide that. Just because depending on weather and the amount of grass that you have and how fast or slow you need to move, I'd rather have the flexibility in something that's not permanent. And so use that poly wire to then do that. But if you're able to start to divide stuff do you have any water running through it, or stuck dams, or what?
I have one pond. It's about maybe 1.5 acre pond. It is on basically the far, what would that be, west side of the back 60. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is the water points for everywhere else. Because it could serve, if I broke the back 60 into 6 paddocks, and then like you said, used poly wire to subdivide those, I could get water to those front 3, but I don't know how. It'd be far travel, especially for, in the summertime to get to the pond.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's good enough water as far as letting the cows drink out of it, or spring fed or something. Okay. Yeah.
I have it temporary fenced off too, so they can't really get in there and tear it up or anything.
Yeah, keeps it better. Okay, perfect. No, I think that's the right way to look at that as far as how you're gonna set up the fence and that. So, one of the questions we get a lot is like, how do I make this grass better? Or how do I get more production out of it? And the first thing is always management, and that that comes just with rotational grazing, and it all leads back to the rest period of the grasses. So, like the easiest thing to remember is if I can give that paddock 25 to 30 days of rest, I know I've probably got enough forage to go back into it. As long as we're getting some rain. And if we can consistently do that with each paddock, we can usually get back into it, a second. And some years you'd get back to it a third, depending on where you started each year. Then the next thing is if there is an opportunity to increase your diversity with legumes, that's how I would increase quality of pasture. Just because so many people need nitrogen on their grass, and rather than fertilizing your pasture with urea every year, I would actually just frost seed clovers. And that's,
Yep.
you're going to get nitrogen for your grass to feed that, but you're also going to get better quality grazing. So yeah, red clover is the easiest one to do. We'll do a lot of L-cyclodina clover, or a grazing creeping alfalfa is another good option too. It's a little less chance of bloat with those creeping types, but they can tolerate more grazing too.
Perfect.
So those, and it totally depends on the state of your grass. If you are doing lots of weed control right now, and I'm not saying you're here, but in some cases, you got a bad buckbrush problem or thistle issue, and you're going to have to spray for the next 2 years. Obviously, we're going to wait and not do anything for incorporating legumes in there, because we're just going to kill them. So get that cleaned up and taken care of first, I guess.
Yeah. So my philosophy, not saying wrong, right, or indifferent. Again, just a lot of my education comes from Greg Judy, and I'm going to try and do everything I can to not do any spraying. I really want to go as natural as possible, holistic as possible, and try to work with it. Again, I don't know.
And you can. Yeah. No, there's no reason why you can't. It comes down to grazing management.
Yep.
Okay, and allocating the correct amount of acres so that your cattle are eating everything that they're given.
Yep.
And then moving on once that's done. When we get into these continuous grazing practices where they've got the entire 40 acres and you've only got the 20, and they're just not, well, obviously they're not going to eat things they don't want to, but
it's like me. If you give me a big plate, I'm going to eat my favorite stuff first.
Got it.
Definitely not eating my vegetables. Get out of here with that.
Yep. Spot on. Awesome. Okay, so the one thing I also think you could do or look into is some sort of, in a way to take better efficiency over those acres that aren't close to the pond, use an above ground pipe to either pump onto that pond, or if you've got a decent well somewhere else where you can, move water that way, and then have your pipe into each of those paddocks. I think you're going to get way better efficiency on grazing those paddocks that way too.
Yeah, I was actually exploring that. I'm trying to figure out if I can get, again, learning. I don't know how well or how efficient my well will pump water that far back.
Yeah. It totally depends on the gallon, your flow of the well.
Yeah. So I was going to look into see, and maybe you got some advice on this. I haven't asked too many people. Just kind of idea I had a couple nights ago is because you were talking about doing above ground piping, and maybe just using those more so for summertime, and then having them, because we have an automatic water up closer in the front 20 that I keep them in during the winter. But maybe getting actual city water or pressurized water, and then running that back there and run off of that, and then just shutting that valve off during wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's the easiest as far as setting it up that way. I know you can get different pressurized tanks too, that fill, and then from your well, it's going to fill, and then that pressurized system is going to help to push it to. There's different transfer pumps too that you can get that way.
Okay.
That help push it, but all options that just cost more money, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting used to it now. It's
part of it.
Yeah.
All right. What are you doing for your winter grazing? Do you have enough grazing right now where you're able to just keep them grazing, or are you feeding with hay, or?
No, we're doing hay.
Okay.
Yeah. Currently we're doing hay. I've been unrolling it,
Yeah.
trying to cover as much of the land as possible, just to hopefully get some stuff back, nutrients back into the ground, cover it, and then also spread the cows out too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I like it. Yeah, it's kind of sort of like, there's a lot of chatter right now about bale grazing, and same principle, right?
Yep.
Like you're giving them the right amount of hay so that they're not wasting too much, but at the same time, anything left over obviously is just going to go back as litter,
Yep.
and in return be organic matter to the soil at some point too and decompose. So
Yeah.
it's all good. I mean, you just have to get, and for you, like, you don't know any different, right? Like, I grew up where like everything was, you're either running it through the processor, or if you're feeding it, it's in a bale ring, it's in a controlled system, like no waste at all.
Yep.
And so for me, honestly, like bale grazing and swath grazing, it's hard for me to get my mind wrapped around it,
Yeah.
to go back to that where now we're okay with it.
Yep.
So I haven't done it yet. I mean, we still run everything through feed wagon.
Yeah.
And it kind of works. You're working with your system, right? We're backgrounding calves anyway, so we're feeding silage, and we have to use the feed wagon where we're lambing in the winter too. So we just feed cows with it too.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like you say, like blank canvas. I'm not stuck in a way. I don't know any better. Like for me, I'm a sponge. Like I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I hang out with, I'm 33 years old, but all the farmers and ranchers I hang out with are 60, 70 years old. And I'm just picking their brain like, well, hey, why do you do it that way? Why do you do it that way? Like, what is the reasoning of this? I just want to learn.
Yeah.
Sometimes I am a little direct, so it comes off like, because I'll just be like, well, hey, so what's the reason, why we do it this way? And I'm like, I'm not challenging you. I just want to know, like, hey, like, I know you've been doing it.
I'm not saying you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I just want to know why.
Because, like sometimes, and I'll probably get this way too, you just do it that way because you've been doing it that way.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to explain it. So, and I get it, but like, I just tell them like, hey, I'm just trying to learn as much information as I can. I want to make the right decisions. But that's what I do. I just try to, if it makes sense in my brain and I can make it make sense, then I'm willing to give it a shot, as long as it applies to I'm trying to work as much with nature as possible. So if I can make it fit that, then I'm willing to do it.
Yep. So I think, like one of the things you said at the beginning is like, you want this to be a fully operating ranch, right? So we're trying to maximize the amount of cows with the amount of land and the resources that you have there. So the other question then is, if I've got, 40 grazing acres and I've got 20 cows, what does the rest of the land look like, as far as like, do you want to try to produce harvestable forage off of it? Or are you comfortable just buying hay every year and trying to graze as long as possible? Or what's the plan that way?
Great question. And just to clarify, I might have misspoken. I thought you meant when you were asking about the 40 acres that is grazable. I thought you meant what was grazable prior to having the stuff removed. All of that, I mean, we probably have 70 acres that is going to be pasture.
Gotcha.
It's just it's not ready for pasture.
Yes.
So the goal is to get that very, efficient. I also want to work on clearing that other 10-ish acres up. So then the cows basically have all of this. We only sectioned off maybe a half an acre for us, and the cows are going to have the utilization of the rest of the land. So the goal would be to maximize that.
Yep.
I already have some conversations with potentially leasing out some vacant land that is butted up to the 80 acres. I know I probably don't need to be doing that yet, but like I told you, I like going full speed ahead. I need plans in action.
Yeah. Well, if it's going to happen, you have to start the conversation earlier than when you're really ready to.
Yeah. So, and that would be an additional 50 acres with about 25 pasture that's already ready. It used to be an old horse farm.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
So,
Yeah. So I think there is, you could make the goal of, all right, I want to have this entire 70 acres into perennial grass production so that I can graze as long as possible. But if it looks like I've got way too much grass for the season, well, now I can just use that grass for grass hay. I think that's a pretty simplistic way to look at it. I think there's a lot of folks like you and like me where like you have a full-time job where
yep.
you've got to be at work X amount of hours every week. And so the amount of time that you can dedicate to things back home gets to be pretty short. And so cutting, baling, raking hay there's a lot of timeliness that has to be done with that stuff too.
Yep.
And so, I don't think it's such a bad idea to just either you're going to be hiring somebody to do that job for you or you're going to be purchasing hay. And right now the economics are such where it's probably more cost effective to just buy hay.
Yeah.
It changes, but in years like this, boy, they're good years to kind of load up. And if you can get 2 years worth of hay on farm, that's awesome.
Yep.
Kind of sets you up for the next year.
Yeah, and that's kind of my goal. Like, I was talking about hanging out with kind of, some of the other farmers in my area, and they cut a lot of hay, so they're telling me I need to be prepared. I'm like, hey, I understand, but like, I don't want to spend my time in a tractor. Not saying that that's a bad thing to do. I want to spend my time with the cows because I only have limited time. So I was like, I'd rather buy my hay and spend time with my cows than spending all the money on the tractor and the time to bale and everything.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm with you. I understand that some years I'll probably, eat my words right there and be like, shoot, I should have been doing my own. But we're going to roll with that for now.
Yeah. Are you feeding any alfalfa?
No.
Or alfalfa grass? All just prairie hay or grass hay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think, or I should ask this. When are you calving?
So I don't have a set schedule yet.
Okay.
Reason being, I don't have any infrastructure to divide or anything of that nature. And as I was just buying cows, I wasn't buying like the premium stock. So like some people are like, oh yeah, they're exposed or bred. Should be this time. And then come to find out it was, 2 months later or 2 months earlier.
Yeah. Sometimes even when you buy the expensive premium ones, it's that way.
Well, that's good to know. But I don't have a set schedule. I would like to get to where we are on spring. My goal for this year, once I get I want to build on the front 20 basically a separating pen so then I can get the other cows in the back, separate them out, and then get everybody on schedule to be in the spring.
Yep. Yeah, I guess the reason I asked that question was to start to think about your nutritional needs of your cows depending on when you're calving and when you're still feeding. And so if you're a spring calver and you're going to calve, let's just say you start in May, you might, and I think you probably will have grass to go to at that time, and you'll start to be grazing, and your quality of your grass is fantastic, and you're going to meet the needs of that cow. And that's how I would plan to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's wait until August and then turn your bulls in.
Okay.
Make sure we're getting May calves. If we're calving earlier, and I think you can get by with it, you might be a little bit muddy down there in March and thawing out and stuff like that, and fight that. But if you are, then obviously we got to probably pump the protein to them cows rather than just feeding grass. Hey, we should have some alfalfa in the ration. But.
Okay.
So I mean that's kind of how I would go about it, and I think like the steps for prepping that ground that that was logged is that's like the next step in the whole process of how do we get that land set up to get it back to permanent pasture.
Yep.
So that you've got perennial grasses there that give you the flexibility to build upon it with your grazing plan. It can flex that way. It can flex if you want to harvest it for hay. But it's set and you're done. And I think the other thing is if you're short on equipment, you're short on time, perennials are your friend, and it's tougher to plan on doing like an annual mix of oats and peas in the spring, harvesting that off, and then coming back with a teff or a millet for hay and harvesting that off a couple times. You just got a lot more management in the system. Even though your output can be higher,
Yep.
I'd look at kind of your resources, what you have available there.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, Justin. Like, currently in the stage that I'm at, like, would I love to be doing that full time and being able to maximize it? Yeah. Currently, I'm not at that stage. I need a little bit of flexibility. I think the perennials allows that because I can kind of put as much time in as I can and manage the grazing plan without having to feel like, oh, I got to put this out now. Now I need to transition to, this cover crop or whatever season we're in. So
Yeah.
I think eventually I'll get there because I do like the nerdiness of it.
Yeah. Well, that's, the I think you talk about like you're just passionate of growing something, and that you like growing cattle, you like seeing calves grow, and most of the times you kind of like seeing plants grow too, and so
Yep.
find the joy of that as well.
Yeah, that's definitely
clicks
growing
together.
inside of me. Like the fact that I get excited about the grass growing. I would not have thought that, but like I knew I always loved the cows, but now that I love the cows so much, I love the grass, and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, this is really changing me.
I love that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll start to notice things that you've never ever noticed before. Like just the process of the whole year process of what grass does. Like right now we're fairly covered up, but we got these skeletons of grass, like brome grass in the ditch standing up. And you'll start to watch that like slowly break down and the green grass come through and the brown grass go down and then all of a sudden May 20th everything's green. You're like, what an unbelievable system this is. How did that happen? Again, by golly, every year it does that.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're a nerd, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so funny because, like, again, I work with, all fitness people. And I was at lunch the other day and they were giving me trouble because they were asking me some questions about, cows. And I was like, well, how much do you actually want to know? Because I will start talking about it. And then we started talking about, like, the soil health and, what creates actually good grass to grow and, like, carrying capacity and things of that nature. Because they were asking me things about, like, Texas. And I was like, well, yeah, that's why they need so much land. Because the soil down there, they just can't grow what we can grow here. I was like, Missouri's actually really good. Like, it's a gold mine.
It is. Yeah. Your grass productivity is phenomenal.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
Have you thought at all about like types of grasses, species at all of what you want to plant back in there? You go that route?
So I started looking at it and then I got overwhelmed I was like, holy smokes. Like, that's the other thing. Like, you don't realize how many different species of grasses and legumes there are. And I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to somebody that's way smarter than me on this, or at least has way more experience so I can get some knowledge. Because again, I just know I want, if we can get back to, the natural, as, the native grasses that would be there, I think that would be great. And then having just a super diverse profile.
Sure.
That's kind of my two goals.
Yeah. And you mentioned it's kind of rolling hills, and if it's kind of rolling hills, you might have some variability. So diversity is key as far as setting up what types of species, and the more you can throw at it, the better. So if you're up for doing a native blend, I think just hearing what you desire as far as like building this ecosystem that's hardy and long-lived and kind of fits really well together with continuous growing throughout the year. That's exactly the route I go. So you can do a blend of cool and warm season native grasses and throw in some flowering forbs and I mean you're going to have a blend of 15 different things that do make sense.
Yeah.
And they're good for grazing, right? Like that's kind of how the native prairie was established, is we can have Indian grass and big blue stem as your tall grasses in there, but we can have side oats and blue grama as your short warm seasons, but still stick in green needle and western and slender wheatgrass where your cool seasons come on early. Add in things like purple prairie clover. Any like white prairie clover is another one. Lead plant. In the forbs that feed that system too.
Yep.
but they're still native, like that fits.
It gets me excited just thinking about seeing all that stuff grow out there because it's going to look awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
cows
on the
are gonna love it.
native thing, if you compare this native planting to a planting of orchard, fescue, brome, the establishment rate is always going to be slower. And it's kind of like if you think of, generally, the longer lived the species is, the longer it takes to get it going.
Gotcha.
Like an oat, for example, short-lived species, but that thing's onto the ground in 4 days. And
Yep.
cool seasons are the same way. They might last, cool season perennials, they might last 6 or 7 years, but they're going to germinate in 7 to 10 days, and they're probably going to be fully established in that first year. The natives, a lot of them, their germination period's like 14 to 21 days. It's really going to take that full season to, have good ground cover, actually see your species, and more than likely you'll just take like a clipping off of it or mowing it a couple times that first year, and then year 2 you're probably going to be fully established.
Okay.
So it takes a bit more patience.
I'm working on
natives.
it. I'm working on it. So, with that being said, is that something that I can, understanding that I might, how would you recommend going about that with all right, so let's say we divide that back 60 into paddocks. Would you just recommend doing it a couple at a time and just keeping the cows off there? Or would you still move them through just quick?
Yeah.
Because there's still going to be other stuff that they can graze.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I guess as far as the planting goes, I'd plant it all at once. Grazing it, you might have some paddocks that get fully established in the first year.
Yeah.
And if you're able to flash graze it, move them through it, you're not going to harm it. It's more so like if you just, let them have at it, like we talked about, you let them have at it, you're going to injure some of the grasses that are just kind of getting out on the ground. Probably just pull the roots on is what you do.
Yep.
So there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's where I am also trying to move on that other lease property so I can let them spend some more time back there to give more time to let these grasses establish. Mm-hmm. But that's good to know too. We have smaller frame cows as well, so I don't think they're going to do as much damage as the big ones.
Yep. Yeah, and your movement and the amount of time that you've got on each paddock is what's going to be crucial to making sure that it's not hurt.
Yep. Cool.
And really, you've got the acres where you can go to that are already existing to start grazing while you're doing the prep and planting of this new stuff. And you can kind of work through there if you get in a pinch, or it looks like even if you've got a lot of weeds coming, which you'll have some weeds coming when you plant this, there might be a time where it's like, all right, let's quick run across that, let them kind of browse at those, pick at them for a day or two, move on to the next one. At least that probably, it gives you maybe another week to 10 days of rest period on where you were before you go back there. It gives you something, even though it's not fully established.
Yep. Yeah, I think, and that's the other benefit too. So we have Highlands and Dexters.
Okay. Yep.
And so they eat a lot of weeds.
Good browsers.
They were crushing weeds. The old timers that would come over, they're like, "Oh, you got so many weeds over here," and then there's like, "Wait a minute," they were just crushing down giant ragweed and stuff like that. And they're like, "My cows don't eat that," and I'm like, "Well, mine do." So.
Gotta get some Scottish Highlanders.
Yeah,
the weed control ones.
Oh, they crush it.
That's cool. Okay, so we've kind of got a plan put together a little bit.
Yeah.
As far as what that could possibly look like anyways. So that's at least maybe starts to get us off with a process. Looking towards spring.
Let me ask you this question, because if anybody's in the same situation as me and they're just getting started and maybe they don't have as much equipment as the established individual, what sort of stuff would I need to get that done? Because I don't have any.
Yeah, I skipped right over that, didn't I?
It's okay. I told you I'm a question asker.
No, that's perfect. Okay, so I would say if the ground. So you said you did plant some clover and chicory on those acres?
Yep.
Okay. I just let that be. If it's fairly leveled up and fairly firmed up, and you don't have a whole lot of competition from other weeds there in the spring, you should be able to just no-till drill directly into that.
Okay.
If it looks like you've got way too much plants growing, you're going to have to do something with that in order to get what you want coming so it doesn't get crowded out. Okay, so we'd either recommend just spraying it if you want to no-till. Maybe you could graze across it really heavily. I don't know if it's going to work in this case because I think you'd need more cows with more impact to really push everything down. You can do tillage on it, but if you do tillage with it, the good thing is you're going to kill all those existing plants and you're going to set those back, and that is kind of the goal in that scenario. But if we do some tillage, we're probably going to have to come back and we're going to have to let that sit so it firms up, or we're going to come back and we're going to roll it with a roller or a cultipacker. Anytime we do tillage, we get that ground pretty soft, and whenever we plant grass, alfalfa, small seeds, we have to have that seed bed pretty firmed up. Otherwise, we plant them too deep, and then we bury them and they don't come out of the ground. So I guess that's how I'd look at it. Assess it in the spring. If we've got a lot of growth coming and we think that it's going to be too much for our seedlings, we do want to kill those plants.
Okay. What was going to be the optimal time to put seed out?
Yeah, so the mix that we were kind of talking about has warm seasons in there. And they're fairly tolerant. They're more tolerant to cold temperatures than a warm season annual would be. But we do want to be warming up just so that, we hit the optimum time when they're germinating and it's warm enough for them to get on the ground. So I would say when it's May 10th, we should be planting as long as the field's fit.
Okay. All right. Well, then it looks like I need to figure out how to get a no-till drill.
Yep. And a no-till drill will, there's like specialized grass drills, and those specialized grass drills have an agitator in them that it's just basically, some of them are really, really simple it's just a rod. And then it's got some other, steel that sits perpendicular to that rod that pushes the seed into the cups. Some of them have an auger system, and it continues to stir, mix, and push the seeds into the cup. And if the seed is very light, it generally doesn't feed through those cups. So I would look at maybe getting an actual grass drill to do this project.
Okay.
There are ways, if you only have access to a grain drill, there are ways that we can make the seed mix more dense by adding barley or spring wheat or oats to it, giving you a higher volume so that now you can set your drill to 25, 30 pounds per acre versus 12 or 15 if it's just straight grass.
Let me ask you one more question. This might be a dumb question, but, from my learning experience, is broadcasting just not effective in this manner?
Not necessarily. Broadcasting can work fine, but I would try to incorporate the seeds somehow. And so if I was going to broadcast it, I would make sure that ground's pretty clean as far as competition. I wouldn't want a whole lot of thatch on there. Then I'd broadcast it. Then I'd come back with like a drag or a harrow. It's just going to slightly stir in the grass. You're going to lay that drag flat, and you're going to get a little bit of scratching into the seeds. And then if I could, I'd get a hold of a cultipacker, and I'd roll it with that cultipacker.
All right, so it sounds like a no-till drill is the way to go.
It's probably a more, like a bulletproof system with a one pass is if you can get a hold of a drill and run one.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
This is good. I think we came to a spot where we wanted to come to, and we got some tasks to do and probably a little bit more research, and we'll keep learning together. And then, like I said, hey, maybe we'll get back on this podcast here in a few months and do a bit of an update and track through this whole project.
I think I appreciate you taking the time, Justin, because I learned a lot. I think did kind of figure out, a game plan and what we can approach. I got some things that I got to figure out on my end. I'm pretty sure one of these guys around here has got a no-till drill. I'm sure.
Yeah, conservation districts usually have them too.
Okay.
Like your soil and water conservation districts, a lot of those will rent them or do custom seedings too. So that's an outlook to look at.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I think we got a game plan, and I would love to come back and share a little bit of an update.
Sweet.
As it goes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast.
Oh, hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you got to give everybody a plug to find you on YouTube so they can watch this happen too.
Sure. You can find us on YouTube. We got 2 channels. One is Algiere Ranch, and the other one is Algiere Homestead. It's Algiere Ranch on every other platform, Instagram, Facebook. If you guys want to follow along, let us know. We'd love to hang out with you. Again, as you learned, we're not experts, but we are showcasing the journeys, the real, the raw, the fails, and just trying to have fun along with it.
Love it. Alrighty. Well, appreciate the time, Jay. Good luck.
Hey, likewise, Justin. Thank you.
Alrighty. Yeah, we'll see you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed another episode of the Roots and Ruminants podcast. Let us know what you thought of it. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those social media things. And, if you ever have any questions, just give us a call. We've got a toll-free number here at 888-498-7333. Be glad to hear from you. Thank you.